Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing. Beautiful midsummer morning. It's going to get scorchingly hot, but for our topic today, that's okay. We're getting into that midsummer rise in the garden, and from this point on, things just keep getting better and better and better in the garden until we reach our fall sort of crescendo. So it's important to remember, think about if you don't have a lot going on in your garden through this time of the year, get yourself to a garden center and see all the summer color, late summer color that's available to you in perennials. And one of those plants that um, has always been kind of an interesting one for that late summer color are the hardy hibiscus. So the hibiscus family is massive. It gives us a lot of plants for different aspects. You've got your Hibiscus rosa sinensis, which is a very popular house plant and tropical shrub. You see it in hedges if you go to the Caribbean. It's everywhere. Um, we have our Rose of Sharon, which is a hibiscus, and it's a hardy shrub for us, blooming at this time of the year and through the rest of the summer. Um, you have some perennial hibiscus that we're going to talk about in a minute. You have annual hibiscus. You have uh, edible hibiscus. If you've ever had the drink sorrel, that is made with hibiscus flowers. We're seeing hibiscus used in all kinds of teas and things like that now. It's a very popular flavor in teas and kombuchas and things like that. Um, so the hibiscus family gives us a lot. Um, Even a relative of hibiscus, Gossypium, gives us cotton, which is really interesting as well. So, but we're going to talk a little bit about the hardy dinner plate hibiscus, which is what we've got in front of us now. Two of sort of the latest breeding, some of the latest introductions in hibiscus. When hibiscus first became available, um, we used to see these big, tall, gangly plants with those huge dinner plate flowers that was really always gets people's attention. It's those huge flowers in the summertime. And they were spectacular, but they had a few issues. You know, 6 feet tall or so, it's a little bit much for some people. But sort of that tall, gangly habit sort of I don't know, it didn't suit a lot of people, I don't think. Certainly didn't suit growers of the hibiscus, but they were beautiful plants. Now, interestingly enough, all these hibiscus that we're seeing now, all come from a common parent for the most part, and that's Hibiscus moschutus. And interestingly enough, Hibiscus moschutus is a native Ontario perennial. It grows in marshes and swamps in southwestern Ontario. It has that tall, gangly habit with huge pink dinner plate flowers. There's a few other species involved, I think, in the breeding, but Moschutus is where most of these started. So we had those great varieties, and they were some really nice ones. One of the first ones I think we ever had in the garden here was Hibiscus Blue River. It wasn't blue; it was named after the Blue River where it was found. I think it's in Arkansas or Alabama, something like that. But it was hardy here for us. Um, it lasted a long, long time in the garden, considering our dry, sandy soil is sort of the absolute opposite of what hibiscus really like. Um, so we had that for years. And then during that time, there was some breeding work going on in the southern U.S. Um, a family of plant nursery growers and breeders called the Fleming brothers were working really hard to bring other colors, a little bit more compact habit, a little bit more flowering as traits for these. And they started to come out, and this is about through the 90s. We saw varieties like Old Yella is one that comes to mind, which was a creamy white with a red eye, and um, you know, breeding developed and developed and developed, and now we're into a really cool time for the dinner plate hibiscus, where we have these amazing varieties with this super dark foliage. Um, I just love them with the dark foliage because it gives you another whole aspect of interest in the first part of the season while the plants are just sort of growing and getting up to flowering size. So, um, look for some of these dark ones. This one here on my right, let me pull the tags out because I've got the names memorized. This is watermelon ruffles. Looking forward to the watermelon pink flowers with that dark foliage. Now, when you look at the tags, they're still giving a height of 4.5 feet, but boy, how the breeders have worked. Look at how compact this plant is for the garden center trade, and it is just loaded with flower buds. So it's going to be bigger next year, obviously. Um, and the sort of that 3 to 4 foot range is about what we're looking at now with most of the new hibiscus, which is still a pretty good size. I'm never one for just squashing plants down so they fit on racks and trucks to get to garden centers, but the hibiscus in the 3 to 4 foot height range can really be a useful mid-border height for the perennial. So it's exciting that a lot of breeding has been taking place. Um, the watermelon ruffles has come through Walter's Gardens, and they have a whole series: Starry Night, Midnight Marvels. There's a bunch of them. And also the Proven Winners brand has really taken to it as well. This I think is the darkest one they have right now, and it's called, I'm sure it's Edge of Night, but I'll double check to be sure. Yeah, it's Edge of Night. And it's a nice deep pink with a red center. They give the height, what do they give the height as? They give the height as the 36 to 42 inches, so in that 3 to 4 foot range. But look at that sumptuous dark foliage. Like that is going to be amazing in the garden. Few things you need to remember about hibiscus, and one trait that actually breeders are working on. There is another whole generation coming after these ones, so the new hibiscus we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years um, should be really interesting. Breeders right now are working on earlier emerging plants. One problem that hibiscus, the dinner plate hibiscus have is that they're very slow to come up in the spring. And I think this was an issue, especially when they were really just sort of hitting the market, where gardeners would be upset because they were looking at the stumps of plants with no growth up until the 1st of June. And I think a lot of people ripped them out of their gardens because they didn't see growth in May, uh, thinking that they were dead. I'm sure that they certainly weren't, although you don't want to plant them too late in the season. That may cause them to not come back. But more often than not, I think people were pulling them up prematurely because they thought that they were dead because they hadn't come up by the end of May. Well, they like the heat. They wait for the heat. Just like ornamental grasses, warm season ornamental grasses like panicums, miscanthus, for example. They wait for heat to really get going, and that's what the hibiscus like. So breeders are working on that earlier emergence, partly so they can get them into the garden centers in the spring. Because you don't see hibiscus in the garden centers in the spring because there's nothing to look at. You see them in the garden centers now because garden centers can put out a great display of these things. And who can resist this? This is gorgeous. I went to get this one, came home with this one. I think I picked the appropriate shirt today that explains that problem with gardeners going to the garden center. But Um, that early emergence was always an issue. So they're working on that, but it's important to remember you may not see these coming up in the spring until late May. So mark the spot. I actually leave the trunks of last year's plant standing um, through most of the spring. It's just sort of bleached white stalk, so it's not intrusive or anything. But it reminds me that that's where that plant is coming up because they are sort of strictly clump formers. They don't send out runners or anything like that. They're going to stay where you plant them for a long time, like a peony, for example. Same kind of idea. Picture these as your crazy summer blooming dinner plate peony. That's kind of how they should be thought of in the garden. Another interesting fact about the dinner plate hibiscus is that they're very heat sensitive, not just in their emerging in the spring, but even through the summer. So when these flower buds are developing, if they're developing in this kind of weather, we're going to have 32 degrees today and for the next 3 or 4 days. Those first flowers that develop in that heat are going to be huge. As the season progresses and we get down to cooler nights later in August, the flowers will get smaller. They are very dependent on a lot of heat to give us big, big flowers. So a hot summer like we're having should give us a pretty spectacular display uh, of hibiscus flowers with these guys. Now again, remember, typical hibiscus flowers generally only last one day, maybe a couple of days. Um, that's a question I'm not sure if breeding is helping that, but I'm sure that I know with Hibiscus rosa sinensis, the tropical one, breeders are working on extending the life of the flower, the individual flowers. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, for cultivation, full sun is best, absolutely, especially with the darker cultivars. You can even see that if I pull this foliage back, the foliage that is not getting full sun is green on the same plant. So that is a clue to you to keep these things in as much sun as you possibly can. As I mentioned, Hibiscus moschutis is a swamp plant, but thankfully it's very adaptable. So you can really grow hibiscus in any kind of conditions as long as you have decent soil and average to moist conditions. Now, that being said, we're actually having some pretty good success in our very dry, sandy soil in beds that we can irrigate. So in the bed behind me, behind the wall here, in our wall garden, we've got 2 or 3 hibiscus varieties growing. They're doing very, very well. Bed gets watered about maybe once every 2 weeks, gets a good soaking, if it doesn't rain. And that seems to be enough for the hibiscus. Any more than that, any drier than that, I've tried them in a couple of dry areas in the garden and they don't grow well. They stay very small and just sort of eke out an existence until they disappear. But average to moist, uh, average soil to heavy soils would be best, and lots of sun, and just enjoy the massive dinner plate flowers. They're really great plants. So have a look at them. There's lots of varieties available. Lots of green leaf, lots of dark leaf. You even see variations in the leaf, a little bit more maple leaf shape, very rounded shape, but conditions all about the same.
Right.
We got any questions today, Laura?
We do. So remember to repeat me. Karen wants to know which of the rows of Sharon are being considered as invasive.
So Rosa Sharon's and invasiveness, that's a really good question because if you've ever grown one of the old Rosa Sharons, we've had cultivars, we've had the blue, a single blue one, we've had a single white, a single pink. Um, And if you've ever had one in your garden and you can see the amount of reseeding that they can do, they really are to be avoided, those older ones. A lot of work is being done with plants like the Rosa Sharon. And one of the big issues that breeders have is how do we stop that reseeding? So there are ways that breeding works now where, they're not just taking pollen from this one and putting it on this one and hoping to see what they get. They're looking into the DNA. They're making crosses in the laboratory. And they're coming up with new varieties that are sterile. Often what they do is they take the chromosomes, and they can remove a bit, they can remove the chromosome that produces seed, or they can actually make a plant a triploid. So you have a diploid plant, has 2 sets of chromosomes. A triploid plant has 3 sets of chromosomes, which makes them a little weird, and it usually makes them sterile. So this is what the breeders are doing with the newer varieties. So some of the newer double-flowered varieties and even some of the new single-flowered varieties are producing much less seed. You'd have to take it on a variety-by-variety basis to be sure of which ones. I don't have definite names, but if you've got those really old ones in your garden, really keep an eye on the reseeding of the Rosa Sharons. Look towards the newer varieties. If you want, yeah, Proven Winners has put a lot of work and effort into a really good selection of the Rosa Sharon. So I would be the place I would start. Look at their cultivars that they have available. See if there's ones that suit your needs. Remember, breeders are also shrinking plants to be smaller and smaller. So if you want a big 8 to 10 foot Rosa Sharon, you might have to look around a little bit, but a lot in the 5 to 6 foot range.
Sophie would like to know, what are some things that can be planted once garlic is harvested? She's harvesting them at the end of July and has a 12 by 5 foot.
So I think the most clever thing that I have heard of is my uncle does this every year. Oh, sorry. The question was, what do you plant after your garlic is harvested in July? You got a half a season left. So remember that. So you could start doing anything. Start thinking about your cooler season crops. Do your quick seed and harvest sort of things. Lettuce every 2 weeks, radishes, things like that. You could probably throw beets in and get a crop of small beets. I think the most fun thing that I had ever heard is my uncle, whenever he harvests his garlic in July, and he harvests a lot, he puts in probably a couple of thousand bulbs worth of garlic every year. And what he does when the garlic is pulled in July, he plants potatoes. And the potatoes start to grow really quickly because it's nice and warm. They grow, and by the fall, you have a wonderful crop of new potatoes. Usually we think of new potatoes as being early dug potatoes in the summertime when you want those nice, small, tender skinned potatoes. But he does it. He has his potatoes ready, garlic out, potatoes in, harvesting new potatoes September, October, November. So that's a great way to use that space.
All right. Sophie was just commenting that Interglow hibiscus is gorgeous as well. Dark foliage and gorgeous flowers.
Yeah, there really are some stunners. Interglow is the variety that Sophie's mentioning of the hibiscus, and yeah, it was tough to come away with just 2 yesterday. So put it that way. There's a lot of beautiful ones out there. So enjoy. Any more questions, Laura? No, we're all done for today. All right. I'm getting in out of the heat. It's going to be a scorcher today. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time on Let's Get Growing.